So we're in the fourth part of the Shiur that we're learning in the Maamar L'chomer Libi that the Rebbe said in 1960. Let's bring up the sheet, the text. So the Rebbe, we have over here the actual original Maamar that this Maamar is based on. This Maamar is based on the Maamar of L'chomer Libi that the previous Lubavitch Rebbe said in the year Tafshin Aleph, so 1951. Hold on a second. The year 1941. So I just want to show the original text from the previous Lubavitch Rebbe, and then we'll do Chazorah, and we'll see if we can get a little further in the Maamar. The Friedrich Rebbe says, the Chomer Libi Bakshir Pani Espenecha Havaya Bakish. This is the pasuk again in chapter 27 that we say, in Tehillim chapter 27 that we say from Rosh Chodesh Elul to Loshen Rabbah. So he brings down, like the Rebbe quotes in the beginning of the Maamar, the Pirush of Rashi, that L'cha, so the pasuk, if we break down the pasuk says, L'chomer Libi. So the question is, who is L'cha? L'cha means seemingly to you. So L'chomer Libi, to you. My heart says, Bakshir Pani, seek out my innermost face, so to say, and then the response is Espenecha Havaya Bakish, that we do it. We do what the heart says, and we go and we seek out the Panecha, the innermost depth of Hashem. I will seek. So Rashi explains who's the L'cha, who's coming on behalf. So L'cha means that Bishvilcha, Bishlichuscha. He explains that the heart, so to say, is coming on behalf of Hashem, and the heart is saying to the person, Bakshu Panai, Omer Libi, my heart says, Bakshu Kulchem Yisrael, all the Jewish people should seek, Es Panai, the innermost depth of Hashem. So it's talking on behalf like a shliach, like a messenger talks. Bani, and the Rebbe continues, Bani Shemei Eloi, I listen to my heart, Es Panecha Havaya Bakish, and therefore I seek out the depth, the innermost depth of Hashem. And the second pirush is the Chomer Libi, my heart. What does it mean? Bimkoimcha. That instead of God, in the place of God, my heart tells me, Boy Elai Libi Loimerkein, that my heart comes in the place of God to say, seek me out, meaning to say, seemingly, seek out the inner depth of your own heart. Bani Shemela, and I listen to Mespenecha Hashem Evakesh, and I see the depth of Hashem within the depth of my heart. So then he goes into the questions and he says, what does it mean as a messenger? What does it mean in place? That sounds extreme, so to say. And in Bakosh itself, he brings down, what does it mean Bakosh to seek? He explains the Ishnei Pirushim, like this is all brought down in our Maamar in the beginning. Bakosh Tchina, to plead, which is in Tefillah, and it has to be done with tremendous excitement that we plead to Hashem. And also Bakasha is chipus, to seek out, with great emphasis, with very great effort. Again, that's tefillah, and it's all in the Avodah of the Leiv, and he says, Betocha Levi Malev. Like he says in Yiddish, in heart and mit the hearts. In the heart, and then with the heart. And he says, why? He explains. The kol inyani avodah. What does it mean to serve Hashem? Which is of tefillah. Ulihischanen, to plead to Hashem lahatzliach. So we should be successful. The person who's praying on behalf of himself, ba'avaydasa, in our service, lechape. So through davening, I should be able to seek b'limtzei, and to find havana toiva, a good understanding. Ba'asagas alikis, lechapes. And why do I want to understand God? What's the asagas alikis, understanding God, comprehension of God? Is lechapes v'limtzei darke hatikin b'chol inyane. So through understanding Hashem, I will have an understanding, a way to fix in all my garments of machshav v'dibur ma'isa, and in the koiches, not just the three garments, like it says in chapter 4 of Tanya, that's the external of the person, where the person is maluvish and enclothes himself, like one enclothes himself in garments, in thought, speech, and action. Although thought is what's called a levush karoiv, very close, like mamish fits the person, almost not separable from the person, where speech and action is more like clothing that could be put on and put off, unlike the thought that's constant. Okay. Not only that you should be able to find within your own character, which is made up of seichel and midas, which is intellects and emotions. And how do we do this? Is avodah. Okay, so this is the first part of the Maamar. So, and then from here, this is the Maamar again with previous Rebbe from Tavshin, not 1941, 1940 Tavshin. From here, the Rebbe goes at length, like the Rebbe says that the previous Rebbe goes at length to explain that what does it mean when he says that the avodah is that we plead, so we should be able to find limsa havana v'taiva, to understand bahasag and comprehension. So we should find in the comprehension that will help us. So there's two things. First, we plead, and we plead so we should understand. And why do we need to understand? So we could be metaken, so we could fix our levushim, our garments, and our character of seichel midas. And how do we start? And how does he go to explain that? And how is one supposed to try? What are we supposed to understand that will help us the sakin to fix? Is starting to understand Hashem through Mibsari Echselikai. Seemingly makes the flow goes right? So Mibsari Echselikai, that I from my own flesh I see God, and then he goes into talk at length, like the Rebbe says in the Maamar, that the question is, why does it say Mibsari? Why is it from the flesh, not to the nefesh and everything? There's a soul and a body within everything, and then there's echsa to see. Are you seeing it through your mind, the ein haseichel, or is it the actual physical eye? So the emphasis over here is mipsare, the best, the physical, the most physical component of what you're analyzing is seen with the physicality. It means the physical eye sees the physical flesh. So too, the most you could look at to understand Hashem is what's most tangible to you. And he goes into explaining this at length. What's it mean? How do you divide it? What does it mean? The chomer. What does it mean? The tzura. And he continues. Then he goes into more explanation how we apply this to understand what the breakdown of the chacham bina das. The different, so what we're trying to understand about Hashem is the different midos and the difference, how there's the makif, there's the rotzin and the tainer, which is mechadish, that creates, because you have a desire, a pleasure in something that creates a desire. That's the extension of the pleasure, and therefore it's mechadish. It creates something new to act on that desire. For instance, in Hashem, that's the chiddush of Ma'aseh Bereshis. God, you had a desire in Nisavik Kadosh Baruch Hu. He had a desire that it should be a dir b'tachtonim. So therefore, he creates. So that's the chiddush. And then there's the way things evolve. That seichel goes into midos. So when that's the process, that's ready. Not a makif, that's internalizing. So that's through understanding, and then the understanding is not just the groups of seichel, of intellect and emotions, but also within every emotion itself. So all this analyzation helps a person understand Mibsari Echsa. You understand Hashem, and through this you'll get understanding how to be mesakin and fix yourself. So the bottom line is, we're trying to do over here, seemingly without the Rebbe says, is the chol melivi bakshiponai, that what is. If you want to put into a single explanation, that what's the chomer livi bakshapanei, that you state that the heart is saying to seek out Hashem, and through Mibsari Echsa, through analyzing, you'll seek it out. You'll be able to come. And what's the purpose of this? So you could be mesaken, so you could fix yourself, and you do that by understanding the pnimis of Hashem. He goes into explain that there's different. So the Mibsari Echsa in the Friedrich Rebbe's Maamar, he goes into at length. Then he goes into the part that the Rebbe continues in the Maamar again. So what we're doing is we're going through the previous Rebbe's Maamar to do a little chazar on the Rebbe's Maamar, because then the Rebbe takes this into, he really divides the two parts of Lacha, meaning on behalf of Hashem is. One idea is the avodah l'sakin, and then there's a fixing, the engaging that we started yesterday. The idea of kitseitzi l'machama alevecha, where there's the struggle, and there's what's called the ha'aris nikud salev. But we'll get to that in a second. But just to give us a chazara, we're going to do it through the Friedrich Rebbe's Maamar for now. And then the Rebbe says what he's talking. Then the previous Rebbe says what the Rebbe mentions in the Maamar. The next thing. That although since the person wants to, through the davening, seek and understand, and seichel midas and Mibsari Echsa understand, and through that you're going to be able to respond to that, the sakein. So you should want to actually fix what needs fixing. And again, like the Rebbe says in the Maamar, that's especially the time is Elul. This is why we say the chomer libi in Elul. We start in Elul. the chapter 27 started to say in Elul. So he says, but nevertheless, it's not enough. Why? Because just understand, at the end of the day, although the mind evolves into emotions, but there's a certain vacuum that the mind leaves to allow the emotion to become an emotional response. And for that to happen, it's not enough to have information. The heart has to be a receptacle. That's why it's Avodah Shebelev. Because the idea at the end of the day is in order to go on this journey of the sakin to fix what we're trying to accomplish over here is the machshav di Meiser and the Rebbe Friedrich Rebbe adds seichel midas, your character in intellect and emotions as well. He says you have to work on the body, you have to work on the heart. The heart has to be receptacle from that. That's like the Rebbe says the charisha. You have to plow through the heart, so the heart should be a receptacle to respond to the emotion. Otherwise, like he says over here. Although we just said before that unlike from pleasure and want to acting on it, it has to be a hischachus, which is creation. But when it comes to a healthy person's intellect, creates emotions, especially by humans that are not like animals, where our emotions should be logic based, right? You say you're overreacting. What's overreacting means you're overreacting to the information doesn't justify such a reaction. So it's an iluvol, it's a process that the mind, so to say, guides the emotion. And it happens automatically. But he says over here a strong point. Like the Rebbe says, you have to have a preparation. You have to be prepared to respond to that information. And then he says that's that riches isbainis, you have to really apply it to the heart. So he says, because although you're contemplating about God and you're detailing the contemplation about God, as versteht im Inyan Seichel Ruch, he understands it. The person who's contemplating has a comprehension of the information. Was tracht, he knows what he's thinking. In ihm wie versteht an Inyan Gashmi, nasa idea riches is when it's much musaglai. There's a process of contemplating and paying attention. And means you're going over it over and over again. And every time you get it clearer and clearer, like it says a klarkeit and a tifkeit. And therefore now the mind is very clear in the information of why you should respond, why godliness is great. And he says, just skipping through it, that you comprehend this concept. And the more you understand, the more you have it clear. Nevertheless, you're not going to have a proper response to this comprehension. You have to apply it to the heart. And what the Rebbe explains is not really applying to that, but it means you have to make the heart receptacle for that. Why? And he says why. Because yes, it evolves. Intellect goes into emotions, but it evolves. There has to be a withdrawal for it to no longer be an understanding and have an emotional response. The seichel withdraws. And when that moment the seichel withdraws, Chassidus talks about this a lot. There's that gap between what we call the narrow of the throat. Talk about very much in the Maamarim of Bereshis, that Mitzrayim is the Meitzar Goron, that it separates between the mind and the heart, and over there is where Paroi the Saramashkin, because that process when there's that vacuum from the mind going into the heart. So it's not the guarantee, the response of the heart, and it may be that the heart's not going to agree to respond the way you want it, because there's a sacrifice, there's a v'chein, right? The v'chein over here is, the bottom line is that you're going to make changes within yourself, and the person may not want to make those changes, so therefore the person is not going to be receptacle to information that the mind says, especially that there's going to be that meitzar gar, and there's the withdrawal of the mind. So therefore, in order for that, like he says over here, that now it changes from the intellect to emotional, and that's the bottom line. So therefore what? So you understand all this. What's the bechein? What's it there for? But it's not, your mind can't create it on its own. There has to be, the heart takes over at some point. You could be excited about an idea intellectually, but emotionally, that has to be in the heart. But if them geschmack from their saga, right? A lot of times we get excited about an idea. There's nothing to do with acting on it. We're intellectually excited about that concept. He says, "Amitis in hispal sichli lo yizu bavad mash nispal min imas varivas hasechel ki mispal snafshe hu me'atoy velikish basak." And he says, "What is this greatness that you're excited about? It's about godliness, and that's good. But nevertheless, your heart's not a receptacle." And he goes, and therefore he says, what the Rebbe talks about in the Maamar is you have to make your heart a receptacle. And like he finished up over here, after all explaining that it should be nice that the mind understands, he says at the end of the day, it's all in the mind. It still hasn't affected the heart yet. In order for the heart to take over, you have to apply it to the heart. And he quotes the verse of Idaita Ayom Vashavei Salavacha. Means, why isn't Vaydaita enough? Why isn't knowing something enough? Because after that, there has to be Vashavei Salavacha. Otherwise, the heart won't respond. Because, again, there's a separation between the intellect and the emotion. And then, so he goes to explain, so how does a person do that? So like he says in the Maamar, is the idea of you have to have, first of all, the hisbon has to be done properly. The hisbon is during davening. It seems from the Friedrich Rebbe that the idea of applying to your heart is both during the tefillah and before the tefillah. The Rebbe kind of emphasizes it more before the tefillah, like in this week's Likutei Torah when it talks about the three preparations for davening: mikvah, tzedakah, and chassidus. And Musar, Zohar, chassidus, the Rebbe says it is before davening. But over here, the Friedrich Rebbe kind of Hashavei Salavacha, he applies to both of his boiners, like he says over here. So he's saying it's Be'ez Tefillah, because it could mean he means Be'ez Tefillah right before the Tefillah. But either way, he does, of course, say what the Rebbe emphasizes, which is Now, how could you have this bitterness? When you have proper bitterness, the bitterness, but the Rebbe says the bitterness, that is the plowing of the heart, which means you should be mimar the chushbina, a person who says, why did I come here to this world? I have a mission. What have I accomplished my mission? Why am I so preoccupied and otherwise distracted by worldly things and not allowing myself to respond properly to godliness? So there's this bitterness, and we know that bitterness is a big part of Avodah Hashem, and the bitterness kind of plows through the heart, and now the heart wants to be involved. The bitterness breaks down the heart, like it says in the Likutei Torah. It talks about the Timtum Halev. Here it talks about, the Rebbe says, the Charishas Halev. The Timtum Halev is kind of, the heart is closed. The Charishas Halev is the plowing of the heart. It's mashma from the Likutei Torah possibly that there's the removal, so to say, of the closeness of the heart, where here it's more like he says, Va'idei Meriris, he quotes this, what the Rebbe quotes, through the bitterness, Nasa Charisha B'karka Levavai. You're literally plowing the earth, the karka of your heart. This makes you prepare. This that you should respond to the information. And then he says what we talked about at the end of the Maamar, that where the Rebbe says this is throughout the year, and especially this is the time of Yud Gimel Tzarachim, which is Elul, and that's the idea. And then the Friedrich Rebbe finishes off the Maamar, and this basically finishes off the Maamar where the idea of Melech B'Sadeh takes avoided, that there's both a person have to answer year, the people from the city have to go to the Sadeh to meet the king, and there's the going back to the king, because at the end of the day, it's all about Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. Like he says, it's only Hagdama, but although the Rebbe has the whole Maamar of Anila Doidiv Doidili, that there's the both parts within Elul, but at the end of the day, everyone agrees that it has to be that it's going back to the city to go to meet the king in the year, and the Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. And then he finishes off, this is just read the end, the final part of the Maamar. And then we'll kind of chazir to where we're holding an our Maamar. Again, this is the Maamar the Maamar we're learning from 1960 that the Rebbe said on the third night of Slichus was based on this Maamar from the previous Rebbe from the year Tafshin. So it was said 20 years. The Rebbe said the Maamar on the anniversary, 20 years. It says, he finishes off the Maamar. This is what it means. Like we said, the two explanations of Rashi on behalf of Hashem, the heart tells me, or in place of Hashem, As in der Avodah likis bedarf men suchen de penimis. When it comes to Avodah Hashem, so here the Rebbe is saying an amazing word to Friedrich Rebbe. What is Omar? What is it saying? Not just bakshu panai, seek out my innermost depth as opposed to doing nothing. But as in there, avoid the likis, when you are serving Hashem, it means it's possible you should serve Hashem and you're not going to be bakshu panai. In there, avoid the likis, but darfman zuchen the penimis. You have to try to make sure, stay focused in your avodas Hashem. Your avodas Hashem should be trying to find the innermost depth of what's happening over here. The hachibus. How do you search? So what does it mean, the chibus? How do you search? How do you seek out? Is when you do the avodah shebelev, because the leiv now is, so to say, in place of Hashem. Lahashlim yisrael yisbarach. What does it mean in place of Hashem? Through the leiv, you're going to actualize, complete what Hashem wants, which is it's the leiv's job, and how make sure you do it in a way of pnimius, of internalize it, and that will actualize in a complete way what Hashem wants us to do in this world. Don't live a chitzonius life. In behalf of Hashem, what's the second pshat in Hashem's place? Is that the heart is coming. Here the Rebbe says it's very short to Friedrich Rebbe. This is the essence of the Yid, Nekudas Yadus, the point of the Jew. Everyone has. That's always connected to the essence. When you reveal that, how do you do that? With tshuva amuka, with great tshuva. To liba, with the heart. Nasikli tahira, then you become a receptacle. The Kabbalah Shefa bracha kol shayim, to get the brachas. So this is the Maamar of the Friedrich Rebbe. What we're holding in our Maamar is that, so let's go through the Rebbe's Maamar, on this Maamar. In the Rebbe's Maamar, he starts bringing it down. The Rebbe quotes L'cha Melibi, the two Perushim of L'cha means on behalf of Hashem, b'shvichol b'shlichuscha, the shur b'nekam here, and in the place of Hashem. And then he brings down the two levels of bakshu panai, which we said before, which is tchina, bakasha tchina, pleading, and chipos, to seek out. And where are they in tefillah? And what is, he quotes it, Friedrich Rebbe says, what is the bakasha tchina? That you should matzliach in seeking out. And what again is the bottom line of all this? The tikkun, the fixing. And that's why it says, l'chal malibi baksha pani libi davka, because when is the time that this tefillah should believe? That's why the heart is the one. Means what are we trying to accomplish over here is to have the question is, what is the nakud over here? What's the pasuk really saying? So like the Friedrich Rebbe says that seemingly at the end the Friedrich Rebbe is emphasizing that make sure what you're doing is b'pnimis. And therefore we answer like the Friedrich Rebbe says, I'm going to seek out the pnimis. So he says, and the tefillah is, that's all done through tefillah. And how do we do? And because the only way to properly go through this process of the tikkun, and the tikkun is to fix ourselves within the avodah, is only through avodah shebelev. And then he quotes it. The Friedrich Rebbe says, "What are we supposed to analyze? What's this beinunus? Is in the Riyas Gashmi, is to see the physical flesh versus seeing the soul within the flesh." And then he quotes what he says, that in order for this to happen, we have to have that the mind, it's not just enough for the mind to tell the heart, but the heart has to be receptacle. That's through the merirus, that's the plowing of the heart. Then the Rebbe says in this next paragraph over here, that this is the most appropriate time, is in the time of Elul. And here the Rebbe adds that here the Rebbe says, in addition to the Maamar over here, it says, V'yesh l'hoisef, here the Rebbe adds what the Friedrich Rebbe, we don't see as clearly in the Friedrich Rebbe's Maamar, that although we're talking about Elul is the time for merirus, for bitterness, to make your heart receptacle, so you could be able to do the avodah with the heart. Again, you have to remember, the Friedrich Rebbe also quotes the idea of b'toch halev im halev, with the heart, within the heart and with the heart, means the heart is going to be a messenger to accomplish something which seems to be the main focus of the Maamar, which is the tikkun, the fixing of the midos. Okay, of machshav dibur ma'aseh, of the garments. But the Friedrich Rebbe also adds with that, he includes it in one with the seichel midos, with the character, so to say, intellectual and emotional of the person. Here the Rebbe adds one more thing, that because it's melech b'sada and yid gem mitzrachim, therefore though you have merirus, but the merirus has to be with simcha. It has to be because this king is showing you a good face, that he's giving you that you should go through the bitterness of life with simcha. It means the bitterness of this process of avodah. And he continues that he says, again, here they're finished off with Friedrich Rebbe ends in the Maamar. We sign by Maamar, the Pirush L'chameli, B'shvichol B'shluscha, B'shalevu B'shvilo Yisrach Lashtim Rizon Yisrach Lasses Samat Dira. And this is what I was saying before. That seems like the part that has to make a dir b'tachtonim, that's b'shvilcha, b'shlichuscha. That's the message. Like he says, that goes with the chipus. You're seeking out how to fix. That's im halev, with the heart, not b'toch halev, using the heart to accomplish something. And is the idea of just experiencing the revelation of the essence of the soul, which is Nekudas Halev. Okay. For the Rebbe, then the Rebbe continues, and he says to understand the connection between the flow of the Maamar. Seemingly, the Rebbe is not satisfied with the initial understanding of the flow of the Maamar. So the Rebbe says that he goes into that. What is in Tefillah itself? We have the three levels of Oilamis, Neshamas, and Elikus. There's a way we look at world, self, which is neshama, the soul, and godliness. And the idea of baksha, and therefore, what does it mean? Again, l'chom alibi is baksha panei, seek out the pneumias in order to be masaking the machshav d'Ibramaisa, and like the Rebbe is going to say also, of course, what the previous Rebbe adds, also seichel midas, to transform the person, which is basically skafi and hapcha. So he says baksha panei in the tefillah itself. You look for what the heart is saying. That look out for the pneumius of everything. When you're talking about what you should seek out, what tools do you use? Is baksha panei, look for the pneumius. Don't, like the Friedrich Rebbe says, don't. In the avodah has to be with the pneumius. And in the pneumius itself, there's the pneumius of oilamis. So understand that what's the purpose of creation? The olam, the world itself, the pneumius of the person, the neshama, my being here, and the person, and in the bottom line is the etzem, and what is really the premise of oilamis and neshamas is elikus. The idea is that the person should get in touch with the essence of godliness, and how do you do that? Through basically the oilamis and neshamas. And he explains that in every one of these three ideas of oilam, nefesh, and elikus, of world, soul, and person, there's the pneumius. There's the part that is, so to say, the force into chitzonius. Because again, we were trying to change the chitzonius of the person. So there's chitzonius, the same world. The external of the world is the three worlds of Bria, Tzia, Asiya, and the Siya being the most external, most chitzon. The fundamental point is it's not achdus, it's not unification. So it's only bittul hayesh. The best, the shvatim were only up to the level of bittul hayesh, although they were able to put their bundles together of wheat, their bushels of wheat. But Yosef says it's not enough. You have to bow to me. It means you have to elevate from bria to atzilus. That was where Yosef Tzaddik was. So that's the chitzonius. And the idea is that Yosef is trying to elevate them to more pneumius. You shouldn't just have that your external wants should be in line with Hashem, but you're separate, so to say, you're yesh. You have to find the pneumius. But there's in pneumius itself, there's two levels. There's the pneumius that's trying to affect the chitzonius of the world, and then there's the actual pneumius of the world. And in the world, that means atzilus, or higher than atzilus. In the person, in the nefesh, it's the part of the nefesh that's able to expose, because the person, a nefesh, a neshama only is a nefesh of atzilus. So the highest part is, so to say, in the neshama itself, is that atzilus that's not about doing something. That's what we're talking about. In the essence of the heart, you reveal the essence, or you're trying to accomplish something. So then the accomplishing is it's the pnimis of the nefesh that's trying to affect the chitzonius of the nefesh, which is the part of the nefesh that's broken, which again is the components. So then he says, so that's what he says. He brings down that that's what pnimis lev, which is pnimis and shamas. Sheshbeis dugmas madrega say luxus and say some chama. The pnimis of he says that the difference, that's when he introduces the idea between that Alter Rebbe says in the Kutei Torah of last week of pnimis of atzmis alev and atzmis nekudas alev and ars nekudas alev. Is the essence of the leiv, the heart, the way it is on its own, so to say, the nefesh, and shama, that's just the essence of God that's within the person, like the chelik of Maamar. And then there's the ha'ara of that. Again, the ha'ara, anytime there's a ray of something, there's a purpose. It's a mocker to something else. It's a source of something else. The source is that it should accomplish something. And that is accomplished to elevate the chitzonis within the person, because the person is made up of primus and chitzonis. So there's the primus itself, and there's the primus in order to affect the chitzonis, which is called the ha'oris nekudas halev. And he goes into, like we learned last two classes, that he goes into explaining that between Bina and Chachma, even though Chachma is also a creation, but it's already it's still a Malam in a Seichel. There's the Avodah of the Seichel and the Avodah of the Malam in a Seichel. And then he goes, we learned yesterday, we started to learn the two levels in godliness. There's Elikim, Havaya, and then he explains in Hey, Elikim is the way the world is the way Hashem fills the world. And over there could be also the concept of Elikim Acherim. There could be, that's where there could be the place where things could be corrupted, and not just corrupted where you're going to be avoid Avodah Zarah. But like he says, we learned yesterday, he says that, we'll go back in a second, he says, so he goes into, first he goes to explain that the difference between Avaya and Elikim is that Avaya is B'derech HaMeila, is automatic, and Elikim is Islapshus and clothes itself. But even in Avaya itself, there's the way Avaya goes into Elikim to create. And like he said, he brought down from in the Ha'ara from Samach Vav, that the fact we say the fact that we have to say that is because it's a chiddush. Otherwise, we wouldn't know that. So he says that nevertheless in Havaya itself, there's a level of Havaya that's even beyond the world, the Atzmus. That's what he says before. I think over here he says. Havaya va'orin seif shleman havaya. The Havaya whom Lashem Hava. Hashem is b'derech HaMeila. And then there's and that's also kind of established through Shem Elikim. But then there's the Atzmus that's beyond the Vaya. And the way the Rebbe is mechadish over here, when he says Penecha Vaya Vakish, doesn't mean Penecha Vaya, the essence of a Vaya, but Penecha of so say the etzem that's behind the name, right? Every person, if a person who has a name, there's the etzem behind the name. So Penecha Vaya, that means the pnimis of the name of a Vaya, but pnimis beyond the Vaya. That's Atzmus Imhus. That's what Hashem says you have to connect to. And that's through the etzem nekudas halev, right? Not the ha'ara nekudas halev. So that we have the ha'ara and the etzem in neshama, and the ha'ara and the etzem in Hashem, in the neshama and in Hashem. And then he says, he finishes off that the the zesh ha'ar nekudas halev ein b'chinas pnimis kach pnimis atzmus Hashem stei v'gam kasher hu b'atzmus. Just like we said that Havaya before it goes into Elikim is still the Magra Elikim. So even the ha'ara before the ha'ara is being effective, that's still not the etzem halev. It's still just a manifestation. Although it's like something that can be used, it's not been used yet. So it's not yet a source of chitzonius halev, but nevertheless it can be used for chitzonius halev. So when we're saying Penecha Havaya, we're talking about in the neshama also the etzem of the leiv that's not even a ha'ara, that's not even connected to have any kind of effect on the chitzonius. And he says over here, as we finished off yesterday, that this is what it means kiseitz l'cham alevecha. That when you have to go out to the world, when there's an oivecha that you could lose to, like we said, Elikim, there could be a siphoning off Elikim acherim, with things that you could siphon off from the energy of everything has to take from godliness, and even the most negative things have to siphon off from godliness. So that's Eivecha, you have mamish fighting. When it says you're stronger than your enemy, that when you reveal the nekudas pnimis halev, ha'aras pnimis halev, then that's much stronger than the enemy. Then right away, b'shavisa shivya, you're going to be able to capture. You're going to be able to control your machshav dibur ma'aseh. That's the kiseitz muchama alevech. But you haven't. He says it's only in the garments. You haven't changed the character of the person. And how do we change that the person should be actually the whole character changes? And that's the second part of the pasuk. The yifas Torah is only when the person's transformed. That you have to reveal the atzmus nekudas halev. Okay, this is where we're holding. We're going to stop here. I just wanted to do chazara, and from here we're going to go further. The nekuda that the Rebbe is going to get to, as Hashem, that we're going to learn, is that the questions that come down to if the Chon Libi has two explanations. Seemingly, the most important part, and that's what we understand from the Friedrich Rebbe's Maamar, is the Avodah dir b'tachtonim, and the Avodah of using imalev to transfer to work on the chitzainis. So seemingly, what's the question is, what's higher than that? Is it higher that you reveal the essence of who you are as you are in this world, or how you transform the struggle within yourself? And of course, as Tanya always explains, and as the Chassidus always goes, that there's virtue to iskafi over isabcha. And that's why we explain that mipsari echse elikai is mipsari. We're looking, we want to, the chiddush is to be able to, not so much to reveal the essence of who you are, even in the world, but in the challenges, in the oyev, you should be alevecha. And that's why the Ha'aras Nikud slave has a virtue. What the effect of Ha'aras Nikud slave has a virtue when it comes to Dir B'tachtonim over the revelation of Atzmus Nikud slave. But nevertheless, it leads to the revelation of Atzmus Nikud slave, the second level of L'chav and Kaimcha. All right, we'll continue next class. B'ezras Hashem.